Japanese naval intelligence officers hunched over their maps and reports, scrutinizing the confusing and alarming battle summaries pouring in from the Solomon Islands. Soldiers and sailors aboard numerous vessels near Cape Esperance and Guadalcanal were recounting the same incredible sight. An unknown American light cruiser seemingly unleashing an unending barrage of firepower, with muzzle flashes stretching so vividly along her deck that it appeared as a solid, intertwined line of light. The scene was extraordinary and unprecedented. Many of the Imperial Navy's most esteemed warships had been annihilated, lying broken and sinking on the ocean floor, victims to this baffling, fire-spitting vessel that seemed almost supernatural in its ferocity. Initial estimates indicated that this mysterious ship had launched over 1,500 shells in less than 60 minutes. The officers conversing over their charts exchanged looks filled with concern and disbelief. Such a feat was simply impossible by the standards of conventional naval artillery. No existing naval guns could be reloaded, aimed, and fired with such speed and precision. Least of all, to achieve that rate continuously over an hour. The fastest rates ever recorded by their own crews were only about half that speed. The very thought caused a pall of anxiety to wash over them. It seemed as though the Americans had developed a new kind of naval weapon, perhaps a revolutionary naval 6-inch machine gun, or even something even more lethal. In the United States, at the New York Naval Shipyard, construction was underway on the USS Helena, a vessel laid down in December of 1936. She was the last and ninth member of the Brooklyn-class light cruisers, designed in defiance of the restrictions set by the 1930 London Naval Treaty. That treaty had limited cruisers to 8-inch guns and capped their displacement at 10,000 tons. Yet, rather than see these limitations as obstacles, American naval architects viewed them as creative opportunities. Reducing weight meant designing faster ships, and instead of arming their cruisers with 8 8-inch guns, they opted for 12 6-inch guns, an arrangement they believed could be even more effective in combat. Meanwhile, across the vast waters of the Pacific, the Japanese Navy was already developing their latest cruiser designs, the Mogami class, which rumors claimed would mount not 12 but 15 6-inch guns. As tensions between the two nations inevitably escalated, the United States was determined to avoid being outgunned, and thus decided that the Brooklyn-class cruisers, including the Helena, would have to be upgraded to match or surpass the firepower of Japan's new vessels. When the USS Helena was finally commissioned in September of 1939, she measured an impressive 607 feet in length. Her armament was formidable. She was fitted with 15 6-inch guns distributed across 5 triple turrets, 3 positioned forward and 2 aft. The layout was designed so that her turrets could fire in overlapping arcs, creating a broad, interlaced field of fire. This configuration allowed her to unleash a storm of shell fire, each projectile weighing about 55 pounds, sending them soaring up to 15 miles in nearly any direction at an astonishing rate of 10 rounds per minute per turret. Her crew of highly trained gunners fashioned their loading techniques meticulously, transforming her gun decks into nearly automated factories of destruction. Each turret team worked with unrivaled precision, wielding stopwatches and synchronized movements that produced a blistering rhythm of fire. It became legendary among observers that no naval rifle could sustain such an intense and relentless rate of fire, leading to her crew earning the nickname Machine Gun Cruiser. Many believed she must have been equipped with automatic or even fully automatic weapons, given her seemingly unstoppable by traditional standards. Beyond her formidable main battery, Helena was also armed with 8 5-inch dual-purpose guns, capable of engaging both surface targets and aircraft, and a potent anti-aircraft complement of 8 50-caliber machine guns. Her engineering was equally impressive. Powered by 4 Parsons turbines, she produced a staggering 100,000 horsepower, propelling her through the water at a blistering 32 knots, faster than most destroyers of her time, and thus giving her remarkable agility and reach on the battlefield. This combination of firepower, speed, and agility made her a formidable presence, capable of delivering devastating salvos with relentless precision, and it was no wonder her firepower seemed almost supernatural to their enemies and allies alike. Following her initial shakedown cruise and a period of intensive training exercises, Helena was officially reassigned to the Pacific Theater in October of 1940. During the more than 12 months that followed, her crew of 888 sailors diligently conducted everyday gunnery drills and tactical maneuvers within the sheltered waters surrounding the Hawaiian Islands. These operations, though routine and seemingly routine, were an essential part of preparing for any potential conflict. The crew, by this time familiar with the peaceful island surroundings, remained unaware that their first major confrontation was just around the corner, poised to test their resilience and preparedness in unforeseen ways. On the morning of December 7th, in the year of 1941, as the sun rose slowly over the horizon, Helena lay peacefully moored at Pearl Harbor's 1010 dock on Ford Island, her hull resting silently in the calm waters. Alongside her, secured to her starboard side, was the mine layer Oglala, an auxiliary vessel vital to naval operations. At precisely 7:57 in the morning, a signalman first class named C.A. Flood was the first to notice peculiar movement overhead, aircraft approaching at an altitude of approximately 4,000 feet. The silhouettes of the aircraft, unmistakable to someone with recent service experience on the Asiatic station, immediately signaled a hostile attack. Recognizing the threat, he swiftly alerted Ensign William W. Jones, the officer of the deck aboard Helena. Without hesitation, Ensign Jones ordered the general alarm to be sounded, activating the ship's sirens and emergency signals. Along with these alerts, he promptly issued a message through the ship's public address system. Japanese planes bombing Ford Island. Man all battle stations. Break out service ammunition. This urgent call to action was meant to mobilize every crew member, urging them to prepare for the imminent attack. Within mere minutes, specifically 3, the first bombs rained down on Ford Island, marking the beginning of the devastating assault. Among the attacking aircraft was a Nakajima B-5N Kate torpedo bomber, which dove low over the harbor with deadly intent. Helena, which was occupying a berth usually assigned to the battleship USS Pennsylvania, then undergoing repairs in dry dock, had essentially become a prime target without intending to be so. The Kate released a specially modified Type 91 torpedo designed for penetrating ship hulls. The torpedo sped beneath the Oglala, which was moored nearby, and delivered a direct hit on Helena's starboard side at frame 75, roughly near the ship's midsection. The explosion was catastrophic. A colossal spray of water and oil shot upward, while the ship's forward engine room and boiler room immediately flooded with icy seawater, turning the space into a maelstrom of chaos and destruction. The blast struck so soon after the general quarters had been declared that many sailors were still racing against time to reach their battle stations, caught unprepared for such a sudden assault. The detonation severed vital electrical cables, plunging large sections of Helena into darkness and creating a disorienting environment filled with smoke, water, and the roaring sounds of destruction. Despite the chaos, Chief Watertender Westbrook was quick to act. Wading through water and oil that reached his chest, he moved with purpose to retrieve essential boiler parts in a desperate effort to keep the ship afloat and functioning. Fires erupted within the plotting room, sparked by damaged circuits and electrical short circuits. Yet the ship's damage control teams swiftly responded, battling the blazes amidst the turmoil and preventing the fires from spreading further. For the following hour and 20 minutes, Helena's crew fought tirelessly to defend their vessel. Their efforts culminated in the firing of approximately 375 shells from her 5-inch guns, 3,000 rounds from her 1.1-inch anti-aircraft guns, and 5,000 rounds from her 50-caliber machine guns. When the ship's magazine locks threatened to impede the flow of ammunition by deterring rapid loading, the crew resorted to breaking them open with hammers, ensuring that the guns remained supplied with deadly projectiles. Meanwhile, Oglala, already damaged by the torpedo explosion, was taking on water as her hull plates loosened and buckled due to the concussion. 3 members of Helena's crew swam across to assist Oglala in handling her mooring lines, attempting to stabilize the sinking vessel. As they returned, the mine layer began to list dangerously, inching toward capsizing. In a remarkable display of resourcefulness and camaraderie, Helena made a selfless effort to share her remaining ammunition supplies with other damaged vessels nearby. She transferred a massive stock of 25,000 rounds of 50 caliber ammunition, along with belting machines and thousands of spare belting links, to the battleship California, which was also under attack and severely wounded. Her crew demonstrated extraordinary adaptability by even supplying ammunition to gun positions situated on adjacent buildings within the naval yard, transforming Helena from merely a fighting ship into an improvised ammunition depot, reinforcing the defenses of the entire harbor during the chaotic hours of combat. Helena's anti-aircraft defenses proved to be remarkably formidable during a critical moment, so much so that several formations of Japanese bombers, upon encountering her relentless barrage, chose to abort their attack rather than risk being torn apart. Her fierce defensive fire was so effective that she was officially credited with destroying 6 enemy aircraft in that fierce encounter, an achievement surpassed by only the battleships present at Pearl Harbor. However, such success came at a significant cost. In the initial onslaught unleashed by torpedo strikes, 26 brave men from her crew lost their lives, and 5 more lost their lives later as a consequence of their injuries. In addition to these tragic losses, the ship Oglala was also catastrophically damaged and ultimately lost, flooding and capsizing amidst the chaos. Yet, despite these devastating events, Helena survived and demonstrated to all that swift, precise gunfire could indeed change the course of events, even amid the chaos of a surprise attack. Within just a couple of days following the attack on Pearl Harbor, the vessel was moved into dry dock number 2 for emergency repairs. Workers welded thick steel plates over the gaping torpedo hole, sealing the massive wound inflicted on her hull. Remarkably, by the end of December 31st, Helena was floated once again and ready for her next phase of service. However, the Navy had even more ambitious plans for her. She was urgently transported to Mare Island Naval Shipyard near San Francisco on the 13th of January, 1942. There, Helena was equipped with the most sophisticated radar technology the United States Navy had ever assembled up to that point. SG Surface Search Radar for locating ships and objects on the water's surface, SC Air Search Radar to detect aircraft in the sky, and ground-breaking fire control radar systems designated FC and FD. These advanced sets enabled Helena to aim and fire her guns with incredible precision, without relying solely on visual identification or line-of-sight shooting. In essence, Helena had become a prototype, a vessel outfitted for a new era of naval warfare, one in which she could engage and sink enemies even in the absolute darkness of night, making her a cutting-edge warship of the time. By October of 1942, Helena was active once again, operating in the treacherous waters of the South Pacific as part of Task Force 64. Her role was primarily to escort supply convoys that were vital to supporting U.S. Marines engaged on Guadalcanal. During this period, the waters surrounding the island were heavily controlled by Japanese forces at night, who executed rapid supply runs and reinforcements through a high-speed operation known as the Tokyo Express. On the 11th of October, American reconnaissance vessels detected a Japanese fleet moving southward, namely, Rear Admiral Aratamo Goto's force consisting of 3 heavy cruisers and 2 destroyers. Their mission was to bombard the recently established U.S.-held airfield, Henderson Field. In response, Rear Admiral Norman Scott's task unit swiftly moved to intercept them, a formation comprising 4 cruisers, including Helena, and 5 destroyers, all steaming in single file through the darkness of night. A fortunate turn of events, often described as dumb luck, positioned Scott's ships in the highly advantageous, crossing the T formation, a classic tactical move that allows one's ships to bring their guns to bear along the enemy's vulnerable front. Unfortunately for Scott, his flagship, the USS San Francisco, was not equipped with Helena's highly advanced radar systems, which meant she was essentially flying blind to the approaching enemy force. Around 11:25 in the evening, Helena's crew, operating her radar, detected the Japanese squadron at an astonishing distance of 27,700 yards, more than 13 nautical miles away. As the Japanese ships drew closer, Helena meticulously tracked their movement, recording every inch of their approach, a feat made possible by her superior radar technology. while Scott's flagship remained unaware of the imminent threat advancing beneath the cover of darkness. By 11:45 p.m., the enemy force had closed the gap to approximately 5,000 yards, close enough for Helena's lookouts to discern their hulls against the night's gloom with the naked eye. Captain Gilbert Hoover swiftly requested permission to commence fire, following the standard command, "Interrogatory Roger," a phrase meaning, "Are we clear to engage?" Rear Admiral Scott responded simply with "Roger," which was meant as an acknowledgement of the message. However, Hoover interpreted this as explicit permission to open fire, and at exactly 11:46 p.m., Helena's 15 6-inch guns erupted in a fierce, blinding salvo that lit up the darkness. Immediately afterward, star shells from her 5-inch batteries burst overhead, illuminating the scene and further disorienting the Japanese. This sudden, coordinated barrage caught the enemy completely off guard, throwing their formation into chaos. Helena's crew quickly shifted their fire from one target to another amid the escalating clash, as the broader naval battle ignited around them in a clash of steel, fire, and smoke. Helena's swift and decisive actions that night played a crucial role in turning the tide of that nighttime engagement, proving once again how technological innovation and clear-headed command could decisively influence the outcomes of naval combat. Although Helena's searchlight platform was destroyed within the first few minutes of fierce combat, this unexpected loss ultimately worked to her strategic benefit. As William Jones, a keen observer of the action, noted, "Whenever any ship turned on her searchlights, everyone shot at her. Since the Helena's searchlight platform had been wiped out early in the battle, we weren't tempted to activate them." Instead of relying on visual illumination, Helena turned to her groundbreaking fire control radar, a technological marvel of the time. While many other ships depended on star shells or searchlights to locate and target enemy vessels, methods that rendered them highly visible and easy prey, Helena's radar allowed her to engage foes with remarkable precision in total darkness, without the need for a visual point of aim. This capability granted her a significant advantage, enabling her to fire with excellent accuracy even in conditions where other ships would have struggled. As a result, her rapid-fire guns quickly found the heavy cruiser Furitaka, which was promptly set ablaze and soon sank beneath the waves. Not stopping there, Helena's guns then turned on the destroyer Fubuki, which was likewise sent to the bottom, while her engagement also contributed to critically damaging Admiral Goto's flagship, the heavy cruiser Aoba. The victorious outcome at Cape Esperance served as a vital morale booster for the United States Navy, especially following the devastating loss at Savo Island just 2 months earlier. However, more profoundly, this battle demonstrated that American technological innovation, particularly radar-directed fire, paired with Helena's devastating rate of fire, could decisively overcome the Japanese expertise in night-fighting tactics. This shift in naval warfare superiority signaled that technological advancement could tip the scales even against skilled opponents, effectively changing the nature of maritime combat in the Pacific theater. A month later, on the night of November 12th, the Japanese launched an even more daring and complex operation to recapture Henderson Field. Vice Admiral Hiroaki Abe commanded a formidable bombardment force that included 2 fast battleships, Hai and Kirishima. These ships were armed with specialized fragmentation shells, precisely designed to obliterate the airfield and every aircraft stationed there. Confronting this threat was Rear Admiral Daniel Callahan's hastily assembled task force, determined to defend the strategically vital airfield at all costs. However, in a critical misjudgment, Callahan chose USS San Francisco as his flagship, despite her being equipped with older radar systems that lacked the advanced capabilities now considered essential for effective night combat. He overlooked the fact that his fleet possessed 5 ships fitted with the newest SG radar technology, which could have provided a much clearer picture of the enemy's movements. At the same time, Helena was positioned toward the rear of the formation, potentially limiting her ability to influence the lead elements of the battle. At exactly 1:24 in the morning of November 13th, Helena's radar operators detected the approaching Japanese fleet at a staggering distance of 27,100 yards, more than 13 nautical miles away. As the enemy ships advanced, Helena maintained her tracking of their every maneuver with remarkable precision. Meanwhile, the older radar systems aboard San Francisco were unable to detect the Japanese vessels at such long range, leaving her commander unaware of the imminent threat bearing down upon them. Still, Callahan remained oblivious to the full scope of the Japanese approach, mistakenly believing that his ships were better positioned than they truly were. William Jones recounted, "The Japanese came down in 3 columns, and we slipped between 2 of them. The fighting once again began at close quarters because no ship knew exactly where the enemy was, except for Helena. In the chaos that ensued, Helena initially engaged and disabled the searchlight of the destroyer Akatsuki, which was attempting to illuminate its targets. The Japanese vessel, however, was soon hit by concentrated fire from multiple American ships and exploded under the intense barrage, sinking rapidly. Helena then shifted her focus to another destroyer, a Matsukase, delivering several well-placed hits. Her actions, however, were eventually hampered when San Francisco, unable to coordinate effectively due to her outdated radar, passed between Helena and the Japanese fleet, forcing her to cease fire momentarily. Nonetheless, Helena's vigilant radar tracking and aggressive engagement played a crucial role throughout this fierce nighttime confrontation, exemplifying the importance of technological innovation and tactical flexibility in modern naval warfare. Following the fierce, relentless clash, the destroyers Asagomo, Murasame, and Samidare entered the scene, intensifying the chaos of the battle. During the chaos, Helena managed to strike Murasame in her boiler room, causing significant damage, while simultaneously setting the destroyer Samidare ablaze. As the battle unfolded over an intense span of approximately 48 minutes, Helena skillfully navigated through chaos and destruction, maneuvering among ships that had been set afire from multiple directions. Her onboard radar system provided her with a precise and detailed understanding of the unfolding tactical situation, allowing her to make informed decisions amid the smoke and darkness that clouded the battlefield, where other ships fired blindly into the obscurity, unable to see their targets. Despite the violence surrounding her, Helena emerged from the brutal confrontation with relatively minor damage. She sustained only 5 hits, which caused negligible harm, and she was responsible for the loss of just a single sailor throughout the engagement. Though the United States Navy secured a victory in what became known as the Naval Battle of Guadalcanal, this triumph came at a great and heavy cost. The battle claimed the lives of both Admiral Callahan and Admiral Scott, leaders of the American forces, along with hundreds of sailors who fought valiantly but lost their lives amid the chaos. Furthermore, the fierce combat led to the sinking, or imminent sinking, of 2 light cruisers and 4 destroyers, underscoring the brutal toll exacted on the fleet. In the immediate aftermath, Captain Gilbert Hoover of Helena found himself as the senior surviving officer among the shattered remnants of the American squadron. In the early hours of the morning, at precisely 2:26, Hoover issued orders for the remaining vessels to withdraw southeastward, seeking safety amid the turmoil. Helena, alongside the heavy cruiser San Francisco, the cruiser Juno, and the destroyers Sterett and O'Bannon, began a slow, battered retreat from the battlefield. However, at around 11 o'clock in the morning, as the damaged formation was heading towards safety, the Japanese submarine Ininus 26 launched a torpedo attack, firing a spread of 3 torpedoes aimed at the San Francisco. Unfortunately, the torpedoes missed their primary target, but one of them veered off course and struck the cruiser Juno instead. The explosion caused by the torpedo detonated Juno's forward magazine, resulting in a catastrophic explosion. William Jones, who was observing from Helena, vividly recalled witnessing the horrific scene. "I just happened to be standing outside, getting some air. I was looking at her and saw her blow up. I didn't see the torpedo track, but she just went up like you see pictures of an atomic bomb explosion." The force of the blast was so immense that a 5-inch gun mount from Juno was propelled through the air and splashed into the water on the far side of Helena. The shockwave from the explosion was powerful enough to knock Jones against a bulkhead, though miraculously, he was not injured in the process. As the thick smoke began to clear, the lookouts on Helena's bridge meticulously scanned the surrounding waters, hoping to spot survivors from the sinking cruiser, but no one was immediately visible amid the chaos and debris. Confronted with a heart-wrenching and difficult decision, Captain Hoover faced an agonizing choice. Either risk his remaining ships in a more dangerous, potentially futile effort to rescue survivors or prioritize their own safety by continuing the retreat. He chose to press on, reluctantly abandoning any immediate rescue attempts to escape the perilous situation. Helena attempted to communicate with a passing B-17 bomber about the sinking of Juno, but unfortunately, the message was never delivered, remaining unacknowledged amid the ongoing chaos. Meanwhile, the unfortunate survivors from Juno were left stranded in the treacherous waters, infested with sharks, struggling to stay afloat. The rescue ships that finally arrived 8 days later recovered only 10 men out of the original 797 who had been aboard Juno, highlighting the devastating loss of life sustained during that grim period. When Helena arrived at port, the commanding officer, Admiral William Halsey, relieved Captain Hoover of his command, citing his failure to organize a proper rescue and retrieval effort. Although Halsey later expressed regret about the decision, acknowledging that Hoover was exhausted and driven by the urgent need to save his remaining ships rather than undertake risky rescue operations, the professional fallout for Hoover was severe and irreversible. Following the decisive American victory at Guadalcanal in early 2043, Allied forces began moving up the Solomon Islands chain to press their advantage. Helena participated actively in a series of preparatory bombardments aimed at disrupting Japanese defenses and logistics. Her heavy guns pounded enemy airfields and supply depots at Munda and Vila on New Georgia, aiming to weaken Japanese positions and pave the way for further Allied advances in the region. On the evening of July 4th, under the command of Captain Charles Cecil, the fleet saw Helena join a critical operation. The vessel became part of the escort tasked with safeguarding the amphibious assault aimed at Rice Anchorage, nestled within the strategic waters of Kula Gulf. As the moment of attack approached, Helena prepared herself to play a vital role in the complex and perilous maneuver. Just after midnight on July 5th, at precisely 12:26 a.m., she unleashed her formidable artillery once again. In a relentless barrage, Helena fired more than 1,000 rounds at Japanese positions, providing covering fire that was crucial for the success of the troops preparing to land ashore. This intense display of firepower helped to weaken enemy defenses and ensured a safer passage for the arriving assault forces. However, the peace of that night was quickly shattered by distressing intelligence arriving later that same afternoon. Reports confirmed that Japanese destroyers were rapidly moving southward along the Slot, a narrow waterway, carrying a substantial force of around 2,400 soldiers and vital supplies intended for the garrison under siege. Recognizing the threat, Rear Admiral Walden Ainsworth swiftly ordered his task force, comprising Helena and her sister ships, St. Louis and Honolulu, along with 4 destroyers, to halt their current activities and intercept the approaching enemy vessels. The situation grew urgent as the Japanese ships closed in, seeking to reinforce their beleaguered positions and potentially alter the course of the conflict. The confrontation unfolded in the small hours of July 6th. At precisely 1:06 a.m., the Japanese destroyer Niizuki detected the distant but growing presence of the American ships through radar, pinpointing their location at a range of 13 nautical miles. In response, Rear Admiral Taro Akiyama dispatched his 3 screening destroyers to observe and perhaps delay the American approach, while the remaining 7 Japanese vessels continued their mission, unloading supplies and troops under the cover of darkness. Nearly an hour later, at 1:57 a.m., the American ships responded with a deafening barrage, unleashing their radar-guided artillery in a fierce, coordinated attack. Over the course of just 5 minutes, these 3 American cruisers fired approximately 1,500 shells, a relentless fusillade designed to disorient and disable the enemy. Helena's guns roared continuously during this assault, creating a spectacle of fiery explosions across the night sky. Witnesses would later describe her like a hose spewing liquid fire, a vivid image of the intensity of her firepower. However, her rapid firing depleted her supply of special flashless propellant charges, which she had used during the previous night's bombardments. Now, using standard smokeless powder, each salvo produced enormous, bright muzzle flashes that illuminated the entire length of the vessel. These flashes made Helena an unmistakable and vulnerable target amid the darkness of night. Meanwhile, The Japanese destroyers Suzukes and Tanakes had sustained minor hits from the barrage, but managed to slip away under a smoke screen, avoiding serious damage. Not before, however, they had launched a salvo of 8 torpedoes, rapidly advancing toward their targets. At 2:03 a.m., just as Admiral Ainsworth issued orders for his ships to turn right and engage a second wave of Japanese destroyers, the enemy launched their deadly long lance torpedoes. 3 of these torpedoes found their targets with deadly precision. The first struck Helena roughly 150 feet from her bow, causing catastrophic damage by destroying her forward turret and tearing open her hull almost down to the keel. The force of the explosion was so fierce that it is believed a magazine may have detonated, adding to the destruction. Despite the grievous damage to her bow, Helena's remaining guns continued firing for a short while, demonstrating the resilience of her crew and weapons systems. Within 2 minutes, 2 more torpedoes struck, these hitting much lower in her hull, about 15 feet below the waterline, smashing into her machinery spaces and flooding her compartments with water. The impacts shattered Helena's keel, effectively severing her structural integrity and flooding her engine rooms, which deprived her of power and rendered her unable to maneuver or fight. Captain Cecil issued the order to abandon ship just 4 minutes after the first torpedo struck, recognizing the ship was beyond saving. As the crew evacuated, the damaged vessel's hull began to buckle and split amidships, the increasing pressure causing sections of her center to sink rapidly. The bow and stern sections, however, remained afloat temporarily, bobbing in the water as the ship's final moments unfolded. Hours later, in the darkness of night, the remaining American vessels regrouped at a safe distance. Suddenly, a searchlight beam cut through the darkness, illuminating something unusual and significant protruding from the quiet, dark sea surface, the bow section of a warship still afloat despite the destruction it had endured. Admiral Ainsworth quickly ordered the destroyer Radford to investigate this mysterious sight. For long minutes, Radford's searchlight scanned and examined the wreckage, its beam illuminating the battered remains. Throughout this tense period, the Admiral's voice was heard crackling over the radio, demanding answers. Who is it? Acknowledge. The air was thick with anticipation and uncertainty on the bridges of the surviving ships, as they waited silently in the shadows of the night for confirmation of what lay beneath that faintly glowing wreckage. At long last, after what felt like an endless wait, the somber and solemn message finally arrived from Radford's command. The message bore devastating news. "I'm sorry to report it is 5-0, a phrase that carried heavy weight and unspoken grief. The number painted on Helena's hull, -50, had become a stark and undeniable confirmation of fears that everyone secretly harbored, yet dared to hope might not be true. The once formidable machine gun cruiser, a symbol of strength and resilience, was now lost beneath the merciless waves of the ocean. In that tragic instant, nearly 1,000 sailors found themselves plunged into the icy water, desperately clinging to whatever scraps of life they could find, be it life rafts, pieces of debris, or floating wreckage, as Helena's shattered shell disappeared into the depths below. Captain Cecil, the commanding officer who had survived the terrible sinking, made a remarkable choice. He refused to be rescued or pulled aboard one of the nearby destroyers. Instead, he took immediate action, assuming command of 4 rugged whaleboats that had been lowered from the destroyers Nicholas and Radford. The rescue operation that ensued was fraught with danger, constantly disrupted by Japanese ships prowling in the area, their presence casting a shadow of peril over the fragile effort to save lives. At precisely 3:41 in the morning, the destroyers managed to reach the distressed survivors and began the painstaking process of pulling men from the turbulent waters. They deployed crew members with cargo nets dangling over the sides, reaching out with determination to save as many as possible. Yet, the grim reality struck again at 4:15 when radar contacts forced the ships to halt their rescue efforts abruptly. Japanese destroyers were approaching swiftly, their high-speed approach threatening to cut off any hope of further salvation. In the chaos of this encounter, a brief skirmish erupted with the Japanese destroyer Amajurai, adding a violent edge to the night's harrowing events. Nevertheless, after the clash, Nicholas and Radford resumed their rescue operations, tirelessly working through the dawn hours. As the first light crept over the horizon, the commanding officers were under strict orders to withdraw swiftly, avoiding the threat posed by enemy aircraft that might appear at any moment. In their strategic retreat, they left behind 4 volunteer-manned whaleboats, each towing a life raft and carrying precious survivors. Over the course of that dark and tumultuous night, the destroyers had managed to rescue a total of 291 individuals aboard Nicholas and 444 from Radford. Yet still, more than 275 men remained unaccounted for, either still in the water or scattered across the turbulent sea. Captain Cecil took charge once more, overseeing the loading of 3 usable whaleboats, each with a life raft in tow, and directed their cautious course away from the Japanese-occupied island of Kolombangara. After setting sail and navigating through the day, these precarious vessels reached a safe shoreline near American-held territories on New Georgia. The following morning, the destroyers Gwyn and Woodworth arrived to pick up the remaining 88 survivors who had reached the coast. Despite these efforts, a significant number of Helena's crew still remained untracked. Some had managed to climb onto floating sections of the ship's wreckage, particularly the bow, while others drifted aboard life rafts, battered by treacherous currents flowing between the islands. The ordeal was far from over. A B-24 Liberator aircraft scoured the waters and spotted clusters of exhausted men struggling in the water's grip, quickly dropping additional life rafts to aid them. Tragically, one of these rafts sank immediately, swallowed by the depths. The survivors faced relentless and brutal conditions: the searing heat of the sun by day, freezing temperatures that struck them at night, the constant threat of sharks circling beneath, and the frightening absence of any food or fresh water to sustain them. As hours stretched into long, brutal days, many of the men grew weaker and more desperate. Tragically, some did not survive the harshness of the ordeal, succumbing to exhaustion, injury, or the cruel environment. By the time the 8th of July arrived, powerful ocean currents had carried several groups of these shipwrecked men to the shores of Vella La Vella, an island held by the Japanese forces. Here, the risk of capture or execution was imminent, a grim prospect that cast a shadow over their chance of rescue. Yet, amidst the darkness, there were unlikely allies at work. The Solomon Islanders, who lived on Vella La Vella and had been observing the naval battle from their villages far inland, spotted the faint figures of the Americans struggling onto the beaches. Recognizing their plight and feeling a sense of kinship and duty, these islanders began quietly mobilizing to help. Working closely with Coast Watcher teams hidden deep within the island's interior, the local residents started gathering the scattered and exhausted survivors before Japanese patrols could stumble upon them. In small, carefully organized groups, the Solomon Islanders guided the desperate men through dense jungle paths, leading them to concealed camps situated far away from enemy positions, where safety was more assured. This act of bravery and compassion offered a rare glimmer of hope amid the chaos and despair, a testament to the resilience and humanity of those who risked everything to save their allies in a time of war. 104 survivors from the USS Helena were clandestinely transported deep into the dense interior of a remote island. They were taken to the residence of a Chinese merchant, whose home served as a hidden refuge away from enemy reach. Meanwhile, 2 additional groups, comprising 50 men and 11 men respectively, were concealed at separate, discrete locations across the island. Over the course of more than a week, brave inhabitants of the Solomon Islands risked their lives each day to sustain these American personnel, ensuring they remained nourished, protected, and concealed from the relentless search parties of the Japanese forces. The local coast watchers immediately relayed the crucial news of the survivors' precise whereabouts via radio transmissions to Guadalcanal, triggering urgent planning for a daring rescue. Admiral Richmond Turner's staff swiftly began organizing an operation that would be extraordinary by any standard. The challenge was formidable, extracting 165 men from an island under enemy control. Such an undertaking demanded a level of coordination and equipment that exceeded usual rescue tactics, which often relied on submarines or swift PT boats. Instead, the plan called for a bold and unconventional approach. It involved deploying a flotilla of 8 destroyers that would stealthily escort 2 destroyer transports all the way to Vella La Vella under the cover of night, minimizing enemy detection and interference. 4 of these destroyers would be stationed strategically in defensive positions to form a blockade, preventing Japanese ships or search parties from disrupting the operation. Meanwhile, the transports would employ smaller boats, likely Higgins boats, to ferry the fortunate survivors, along with the Chinese merchants and their families, to safety under the cover of darkness. On the night of July 15th, the entire rescue force arrived silently off the coast of Vella La Vella. As dawn approached, the survivors aboard USS Helena sent flashing signals from the beach, confirming their recognition and readiness for pickup. The rescue operation was executed flawlessly. Small boats darted through the surf, quickly collecting the men, alongside several civilians who had played pivotal roles in hiding and assisting them. Among those rescued were not only the sailors from Helena, but also an American pilot who had been shot down and a Japanese pilot who had been captured. Remarkably, the entire mission was completed without a single loss. All 165 survivors, along with the 2 pilots, were evacuated safely. The flotilla returned to Tulagi that very afternoon, where the rescued men were joyfully reunited with their crewmates who had been desperately pulling them from the water on the night of the sinking. USS Helena's heroic actions at Cape Esperance, Guadalcanal, and Kula Gulf earned her the Navy Unit Commendation, recognizing her as a ship of exceptional service throughout the brutal campaign in the Solomon Islands. Despite her legendary exploits, for 75 years, the final resting place of the Helena and her crew remained unknown to the world. It was only on April 11, 2018, that the mystery was finally solved. The research vessel RV Petrel, operated by billionaire philanthropist Paul Allen, undertook a dedicated expedition seeking to locate ships lost during the Solomon Islands campaign. During this mission, the wreck of USS Helena was discovered, lying in 2 sections at a chilling depth of approximately 2,820 feet beneath the ocean's surface. The ship's hull number, 50, was still vividly visible on her stern, confirming her identity. The team also recognized her by the distinctive features that had made her both feared and revered: her 5 triple turrets, which had earned her the nickname Machine Gun Cruiser. Incredibly, Helena's service record remained unparalleled. During her active combat career, she had fired over 10,639 rounds, more than any other vessel in the history of the United States Navy. This extraordinary feat underscored her relentless fighting spirit and formidable firepower. Today, a memorial stands proudly in Helena, Montana, honoring both the cruiser and the men who served aboard her. The monument bears the names of those who lost their lives and includes an enduring inscription: "They are still Helena men, always will be," emphasizing the lasting legacy and unbreakable connection between the ship, the city, and its brave crew.